City Island was the last stop on my father's route. It was one of our favorite places. It was like going on a vacation for a day. My dad would listen to his jazz and we would talk about baseball.
Dad, can I have an ice cream?
We do our job first, and then I get you an ice cream. Okay?
Okay, Pop. Let's play the game, Dad.
Okay, let's see how good you are today. Who was the last player to win the Triple Crown?
Mickey Mantle. Batting average, 353. RBIs, 130. Home runs, 52.
It's pretty good, son.
He's the greatest ball player that ever lived, Dad.
Well, Joe Dee's the greatest ball player.
The Yankee Clipper. 56-game hitting streak.
That's right.
Nobody beat that, right, Dad?
Nobody beat that, son. And you know why Joe D was so great?
Because he was Italian?
Well, that's part of it.
Then why?
Because he had more talent than anybody.
Talent?
That's right.
Do I have talent, Dad?
Of course you have talent. You got all the talent in the world.
Can I be a baseball player?
You can be anything you want to be. Remember, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't do the right thing, then nothing happens. But when you do right, guess what? Good things happen. You hear me?
You're right.
Let's go for that ice cream.
Yeah, good. I'm gonna shut the doors, right, Dad?
Yeah. Ready? Watch it. Got it?
I got it.
Wasted talent. That was something my father would talk about all my life.
Come on.
Does anybody remember that movie? It's called A Bronx Tale. It came out in 1993. Robert De Niro won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Chaz Palminteri won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay. If you're in New York City, you can go to the Times Square area, and the play's on Broadway as well. It is this wonderful movie that just really has one main point. And you heard both the dad and the son say it. One of the greatest tragedies in life is wasted talent. Now, for the middle hour and 45 minutes of the movie, you see that this kid, his name's C, he's influenced by two men. One's his dad, Robert De Niro, the hardworking bus driver, honest as the day is long. And the other man was the mobster. He was the neighborhood boss. That was played by Chaz Palminteri in the movie. The man's name was Sonny. Sonny was one of those guys that was good at heart, but he was just trapped into something that was way too big for him. He was in over his head, and he was actually trying to steer the kid away from, any type of, mafia, gangster stuff that would have been common in the Bronx back in the 1940s, 1950s. At the end of the movie, Sonny dies, and at the end of the movie, it starts the same way it begins. This time, it's the kid who's talking to the dad, and he says, there's nothing worse in life than wasted talent. And he was talking about his mentor, Sonny, who was killed because of his mob activity stuff. And I left the movie theater. I remember seeing that in 1993. I was 6 years old at the time. But I remember leaving the movie theater, and I got the point. There's nothing in life. It's one of the greatest tragedies of life is wasted talent. Now, Jesus knew this too. Jesus actually could have said in Matthew 25, there's nothing in life like wasted talent. It's a waste, it's a tragedy. But he didn't do that. He told a story. We're in the middle of a series called Stories at the Water's Edge, where we look at the teachings, the parables of Jesus. And in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus is pretty much near his death at this point. Matthew 26 is where we talk about the Lord's Supper. Matthew 27 is where he dies. Matthew 28 is where he's resurrected. So this is near the end of his life, and he tells three parables, three stories. We looked at the first one the first week. Always be ready. Always have oil in your lamp. You don't know when Jesus is going to return. Be faithful. Be prepared. Be ready. A disciple is not made in a day. A disciple is made daily. And I really hope in the last 2 or 3 weeks that some of you have made some daily progress on resembling Christ more closely. And the last one he tells in Matthew 25, so cool to see Morgan up here a little bit ago because, she's doing this. Jesus says, when I was hungry, you fed me, and when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink, and when I was without clothing, you gave me clothes, and when I was a stranger, you welcomed me, and when I was sick and in prison, you came to visit me. And so salvation is the first story, justice is the last story, and in the middle, Jesus tells this story about wasted talent, which leads us to our first lesson this morning. It's number one, none of us are created equal. We're just not. So the Declaration of Independence, it says all men, all people are created equal. And what they mean there is that we all have this propensity to have like the equal opportunity and equal rights in front of us, but we're not all created equal. So I was at our annual conference. It's all the Methodist clergy from Nebraska and Kansas would get together, and I don't know how many there are. I think there might be 800 or 900 of us. There was probably about 40 or so that retired. I was at the retirement thing. It's all the clergy are in one great big room together, and the 40 people who are retiring were, in front of all of us. And so we actually have to vote on whether we're going to let them retire or not. I'm not sure if a negative vote would stop them or not. But after the vote was taken, we, as we should have, we gave them a standing ovation. Some have been a pastor for 8 years and their service is done. Some of them have been a pastor for 48 years and their service is done. And we just stood and we clapped. It was a really cool moment. As I looked up there, it's obvious. I mean, not all of them are created equal. There's one man from Lincoln, and he's been a friend of mine for years. Probably one of the best, most effective pastors I've ever met. He can preach. He's a leader. He's a visionary. He's a caregiver. He can do it all. As he was leaving, he saw me, and I was standing clapping. He came and shook my hand, and he's one of those guys that's been blessed by God. He's a 5-star individual. There's some others that came through, and I don't know if they have the natural skill set that this man has, but they were faithful nonetheless. So our faithfulness does not depend upon our talent. Our faithfulness depends upon what we do with that talent. So listen to how Jesus starts this parable. Matthew 25, verses 14 through 15. Again, so when he says the word it, this is the kingdom of heaven. Again, it will look like a man going on a journey who calls his servants. So already we can see the allegory here. The man is going to be God. It's going to be Jesus. Going on a journey, he called his servants. That's going to be us. And entrusted his wealth to them. So God, in this case, gives his creation to the created. We're entrusted to this world that we live in. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold. There's the 5-star guy right there. He got 5 bags of gold. To another, 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Now, I don't know why, all of us aren't created with the exact same skill set. We can ask God that question when we get to heaven. I don't know why. I was at the College World Series a few times this week, and both times we saw Oregon State play. Now think of the journey that these 18 through 22 to 23-year-old young men have taken. They probably started playing baseball when they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. They probably made some select team along the way. They probably got to their high school, and they made some high school team along the way. They don't even have to just make the high school team, though. They have to be really the best of the best in their school to get a Division I offer to play baseball at one of these elite schools. And not only do they have to be the best of the best at their school, they have to be better than most of the kids at the other schools. So you see the 9 kids on the field at any given time. And there's at least 12 or 13 or 14 of them on the bench at any given time. Now, some of these players are 5-star players. In fact, when they were in high school, there was probably a recruiting service that gave them what's called a 5-star ranking. Some of them, they're threes, they're fours, there might be a really high overachieving two. Probably if you're watching Oregon State, what do they have, like three first round draft picks? So 3 of these people are going to be making significant money playing baseball over the next 10 to 15 years of their life, where most of them are going to be financial planners and teachers, medical salespeople, graduate students. So even here, you can see that this is a reality of life, that not all of us are created equal. And I believe that diversity is a good thing. I think our world would be pretty bland. I think our world would be pretty vanilla. I think our world would be pretty boring if all of us were created the exact same way. I believe that there is beauty in diversity, and diversity makes the world a more beautiful place. Now, I think one of life's great pleasures is watching a 5 bag of gold, a 5-star, a 5-talent person who has worked so hard doing what they do better than anybody else. So you listen to Norah Jones sing, you watch LeBron James play basketball, you watch Warren Buffett talk about investments. Those things are amazing when they happen. But there's something more amazing. It's really cool to see the overachievers. The people that may not have the skill set or the talent of somebody else, but they're doing what they can do to the absolute best of their ability. To see the guy who's working a job and a half and he's raising 2 or 3 kids by himself. That's what's really cool. To see the woman doing something that somebody else told her that she could never do because she's not good enough. To see the person fighting cancer with everything they got and still living a fairly normal life. We're not all created equal, but it is a beautiful thing when in our diversity we do the absolute best with what we have. Do y'all remember Dr. Seuss? Dr. Seuss, he says, why fit in when you were born to stand out? You're not created to be like everybody else. You're not created to be like somebody else. You were created to be the best you that you can possibly be. Embrace who you are. Don't complain about who you're not. That doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do anybody else any good. If God's given you a voice, then start singing. If God has given you creativity, then start creating. If God has given you patience, then start listening to somebody. Now, number 2, work comes before success. One of the things that this parable teaches us is that work comes before success. I used to be a soccer coach, and it's really cool nowadays. About half the kids graduated this year. Half the kids are going to graduate next year. There's 5 of them that still play. 1 plays for Omaha North, 1 plays for Omaha Central, 1 plays for Millard South, and 2 play for Millard West. And one of the things that these kids learned, because I said it every practice, and it's a lesson that I hope that they carry with them for the rest of their days, is I would tell them at the end of practice, I would tell them at the beginning of practice, the will to win means absolutely nothing without the will to prepare to win. I really hope that they take that with them when they're studying for their college biology exam, or when there's one more sales call that they can make on a Friday afternoon, or when there's just a little bit of extra time and they can go practice with their kid in the future. Work, it comes before success, and Jesus tells us that. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work, and he gained 5 more. So also, the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. So does anybody in here like ribs? Like the kind that comes out of, not these, like right here, but the kind that comes, you can actually feel them, but they're in there somewhere. But the kind that comes out of a pig, maybe that's why I got, because I like ribs too much. But so you could go to like Walmart or Hy-Vee and buy like this little prepackaged stuff with all the barbecue sauce on top, and you can throw it in the microwave, and 3 minutes later you get yourself a rack of ribs. So last night I was home, and it was about 8:15, 8:30 or so, and The next door neighbor texts us and says that he has smoked all these ribs and he wants to give us 2 slabs of them. Now, being the humanitarian I am, I took them off his hands and made him feel good about himself. He's closer to God now. You bring ribs to the pastor, points with God. That's how it works. If you learned nothing else this morning, there you go right there. So he came over, and I asked him, so how long did you cook these for? And he said 6 hours. 6 hours in the smoker, and they were these St. Louis ribs, and I had already eaten dinner, but I was going to eat dinner again, and I'm still full. I had 3 or 4 of these ribs, and they were absolutely amazing. He cooked these things with love and care. He put the right amount of spices on them. I put some Grandma Foster's barbecue sauce. That's the kind that Jesus ate, by the way. And my God, those things were good. I was like, praise the Lord, hallelujah. It was like a religious experience eating these ribs that this man made. But that's our problem. We want the 6-hour smoker result with the 3-minute microwave preparation. And life does not work that way, and Jesus makes no implication that it does. So Thomas Edison, he said that opportunity is missed because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work. Opportunity is work, and it's not easy. And everybody has talent. Some of us have 2, some have 3, some have 4, and there's some of you who are blessed to have 5. Everybody has talent, but what is rare is developing and using that talent to its fullest possibility. I think about the Apostle Paul. I would probably say 2, 3 talent guy. He was smart. He went to the right schools. He was with the right group of people. He says he was short. He said he didn't speak very well. He had some kind of disease or something was going on. He asked God 3 times to take it away. God didn't do it. But Paul, he wrote about 40% of the New Testament. He planted many of the churches that planted many of the other churches that got the church started. And yesterday afternoon, I did a wedding, and I actually read some of Paul's words. Love is patient and it's kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It doesn't keep score. It keeps no record of wrong. It always hopes. It always perseveres. It never gives up. I read those words that he wrote, and he wasn't a 5-talent guy. He was a 2 or 3 talent guy that extracted everything out of those talents that God gave him. And number 3, courage and risk are higher values in God's kingdom than comfort and security. So I said that they're higher values in God's kingdom. I don't think right now they're higher values in God's culture. Listen, we sit in a lazy boy chair. We buy insurance. You can tell that comfort and security are important to us. But that's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, I want you to be courageous. I want you to take some risk. In verses 24 and 25. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you've not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid. What's that word? I was afraid. And I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. And I remember the first time I read this parable, I thought, well, fair enough. Doesn't want to mess up. Doesn't want to lose anything, so he hides it. Now the story continues, Jesus says, you wicked and lazy servant. You could have, at least taken the money to the bank where it would have gotten some interest. But you were too afraid to even do that. What Jesus is saying here is you're going to miss out on a lot of life if comfort and security are your primary values. The abundant life, the blessed life, the prosperous life is for those who are willing to display some courage and take some risk. You don't want to be a sundial in a shade. You don't want to have all your talents where they're not doing anybody any good. Benjamin Franklin, he said, hide not your talents. They for use were made. What good is a sundial in the shade? You've been blessed. I know most of you. You're 3 talent, you're 4 talent people. Some of you are 5 talent people. You have been blessed, and with here's the deal. Hustle is going to be better than talent, especially when talent doesn't hustle. It's about hard work. It's about courage. It's about taking some chances. To risk means that you may lose your footing momentarily. Not to risk may mean that you will lose yourself. So I don't play golf very often, but when I do, I tell stories about it in church. And so you didn't hear any stories in 2017 about golf because there were none. I have gotten to play twice this year. And I played with a man who was probably bordering on being legally blind. One of his friends, who's a good friend of mine, and this was an amazing experience. This man would come up to the ball and he would have to stare, and he would ask us where'd the ball go? Where's the flag? He just did not see very well. And then he owns this company. He's got a little building on Dodge Street. It's got his name on it. And he's 74 years old. He still works. I asked him, I said, well, how do you get to work if you don't see very well? And he says, well, I have a seeing eye car. And I said, so he actually has a Tesla. He has a Tesla, and that's how he gets to work. And so, gosh, he beat me by 1 stroke. He got a 43, and if you want to know what I got a 44. And I was really happy with that. But I just, I left and I was inspired. Seriously, I was inspired. I met him a few weeks ago at a party before that, and this guy is running this company, and he's dealing with this eye disease, and he plays golf. And comfort and security says, I can just cash in my stuff. I can live with comfort. I can live with security until the end of my days. Courage and risk says, I'm going to get out there at 6:46 in the morning. I didn't even know that people got up that early, let alone to get up that early to play golf, but it was this wonderful experience. And he received the blessing of beating me in golf, and that's a really cool thing for him. And but seriously, I left inspired. If the guy who's bordering on blindness can play golf, there's almost nothing that none of us can't do. Sorry for the triple negative there, but it was a call for us to head toward abundance. And the last thing I want us to look at is number 4. God gives abundance, blessing, and responsibility to those who are faithful. Now notice what I said there. I didn't say God gives abundance, blessing, and responsibility to those who are talented. Never said that. I said God gives blessing, responsibility, and abundance to those who are faithful. So Jesus concludes, so take the bag of gold from him. The guy that wouldn't use his talent, he doesn't need it because he's not using it. So let's give it to the one who does use it. Let's give it to the one who has 10 bags. And Irma Bombeck, many of you would have grown up reading her little newspaper column. She says this, and just cling on to this, embrace this, live this one out. When I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say, I gave you everything you gave me, or I used everything you gave me. In a while, I'm going to be the guy up in the front of the room retiring. And I really hope at that moment I can look back and I can say, I gave it everything. Got everything that you gave to me. I used it, and I tried to get as much out of that as I possibly could. There's going to be a day that I'm no longer alive. Oftentimes I'll say the words from this parable at funerals. And I hope the preacher, whoever it is, can say this one with integrity and authenticity. Craig, well done, my good and and faithful servant. You know, for all of you who are raising kids, when that kid graduates and that kid goes off to college, I hope there's no wasted talent that God gave you in raising these kids. I hope that we can generally look at you and say, well done, my good and faithful servant. You know, so many of you volunteer in this place, and you make this place what it is. You know, and God is saying, Jesus is saying to you, well done. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You welcomed that person. You smiled at them. You made them feel at home. Now, you held their babies so they could come and they could worship God without distraction. You know, you do the thankless job of, you know, working back there in the sound and the media booth. And when things went well, no one even knew you were there. And when things didn't go so well, they all looked back there and, well done, my good and faithful servants. You know, all of you who are like leading our kids on our mission trips this summer, give it your all. Every bit of talent that you have in this, give it your all. You know, in your workplaces, in your homes, in your neighborhoods, in your sports teams, wherever you are, use all the talent that God has given you. God's not concerned about our talent. He's already aware of that. What God's concerned about is our faithfulness. And remember, if the guy who's almost blind can hit a pretty darn good golf ball and play a pretty darn good golf game, there's absolutely nothing that we can't do.